So we're going to look ahead to the ladies football finals tomorrow. Delighted to be joined in studio by the all-round Irish sporting legend Cora Staunton, four-time winner with Mayo. Cora, great to see you.
Thanks, John. Good to see you.
How are you?
I'm good. Looking forward to tomorrow now. I think it's going to be a cracker. So yeah, looking forward to the big one, Dublin and Kerry.
Yeah,
very hard to call. I've been asked a number of times this week. I think I've changed my mind on a number of occasions. So
we won't get to it yet. It's quite a special day for ladies football because it's the 50th final. The first one was played in Douro, I believe, in 1974. Come a long way.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, it's certainly come a long way in my time in playing it and seeing the final since I was young, and our first final to where it's at now. It's come on huge. From a sense of skill, athleticism, power, and then obviously the coverage around it over the last kind of maybe 2 decades has come on huge. As you said, 1974. There was played in Douro, wasn't played in Croke Park, and just the coverage around it. But I think that's ladies sport in general. I think it's been on an upward curve, whether it's Gaelic football, the Women's World Cup, soccer, the rugby, whatever it might be. I think it's just women's sports on a crest of a wave at the moment, and ladies football is the same.
And we have over 50,000 people probably there tomorrow. We can't forget that's one of the biggest attended sporting events for the world for women. The ladies football really has got something going, and we saw that in the year before COVID. 2019 there's 56,000 people at Dublin and Galway, and it just captured the imagination of the public at the final especially.
Yeah, I think it is, and I think that's huge. I think like the Camogie, last week, they had a record-breaking crowd for them. I think a lot of the time with ladies sport and ladies events, the final is the showpiece, like the men's game, but it probably doesn't get as much publicity, from quarter-final, semi-final, or group stages. So there's a bit of pressure on then to make sure the showcase is good and it's a good game, and I think that'll be the case tomorrow. So there's record crowds expected tomorrow. Obviously 2019 was the biggest crowd, and then COVID hit, and obviously in the years since then, the numbers have been on the increase. I think there was over 40,000 there last year. So I just think I'm hoping, and I think it will be a great game tomorrow, because the two best teams all year are in the final, and they're so evenly matched, and it's going to be very hard to call, and it's the same with all three finals. So it's the showcase of ladies football tomorrow, and you just hope that all three matches are of good quality.
A lot of players in Dublin and Kerry going through all the emotions of the 24 hours before the final. Now you're 17 playing your first final for Mayo.
Yeah, and I suppose that's it. Your first final is very different to the rest, because it's that whole experience. Maybe your first time playing in Croke Park, your first time playing in front of a big crowd, and the noise in Croke Park, and there's a lot of external factors when it's your first final. I think once you've been there once, it's pretty much the same, for the following finals. So both Dublin and Kerry have been there before. Kerry obviously in the final last year. Dublin have been there on numerous occasions with their 4 in the row, between 17 and 20. There is not a lot, but there is girls on that Dublin team. There's 40 new girls in the panel, and a lot of them wouldn't have experienced All-Ireland final days. So, that's very nerve-wracking for them coming in. But then there's the experience on the other end. The likes of, the Sinead Ahern's, Hannah Turles, girls, Carla Rose, that have been there before, and, in some cases, in Hannah's case, have played, big games in rugby for Ireland. So they'll guide them. But it's a huge occasion, and it's what every ladies footballer, like camogie player, men's footballer, hurler, want to be on the final day on the biggest stage, and that's what you train for all year.
Did you enjoy any of the four more than another one?
I don't know if you enjoyed them at the time. You enjoy looking back at them. I probably enjoyed 2002 the most, especially because we'd lost the previous year, and I think you always have to probably lose one to know how important they are and how hard they are to win. So we lost obviously in 2001 by a point in the last kick of the game. So to go back and win in 2002, that was special, and that year in particular we won the Club All-Ireland, I think probably 8 weeks after that as well. So I do look back on that one fondly, because it was one that we won after a heartbreaking defeat the year before.
There's a lot of work still to be done, and we saw with the protests this year around equality for ladies players in both football and camogie. What's changed in terms of what players receive now versus when you were playing? The conditions, I think, to be fair, were pretty primitive when you were playing the game. Was it correct?
Yeah, there were. And again, I have been out of the inter-county game now for 5 years, I think, is it at this stage. So I can't really comment what I've seen within Mayo now, because I haven't been around talking to a few girls that I'd be friendly with that are involved. And I suppose I can see it this year when I was involved with Galway Camogie. They're extremely well looked after from a camogie sense in what they got. Basic stuff like pitches, physios, food, whatever it might be. That was they had a very professional setup, but I don't think that's the case throughout every county. I suppose my time when I was there, we were fighting for for basic stuff, and food after training was one. We probably didn't have that for majority of my career, maybe towards the latter end of it. Basic training pitches, majority of the time we'd train on rugby pitches or pitches that weren't very good, and basic things, showers after training that you were fighting for. I know the equality and the protest that the GPA were doing this year was more so around all of that, and that you're looked after medically and expenses. And I suppose my time in Mayo, and I done 24 seasons with Mayo, we never got travelling expenses, and I know that's not the case now. Is there's a little bit of expenses, but it's not being matched what the men is getting. So I think that's what the protests were about, that female inter-county players, whether ladies football or camogie, are putting in as much time and effort as the men. And the GPA, and since they've become under the one umbrella, I think they're doing massive work to have that equality and have some sort of charter there that it mightn't be that they get the exact same as the men straight away, but they're fighting that they're looked after well, because the stark reality is that there's girls, whether they're camogie players or ladies footballers, some of them couldn't go and play the game of ladies football or give the commitment because they needed their part-time jobs, and they couldn't give them up because of the game. And they're out of pocket basically, whether you're playing for Galway Camogie or if you're playing for Mayo ladies, whoever it was, they were out of pocket, travelling to training and taking time off work and stuff. So I suppose when you give that much time, you should be rewarded, and you want to be looked after, and it's not, you're just asking for the basic rights. And if you get injured, that whatever the injury might be, is that you're not out of pocket for that. So which in my days you are, and I think it's hugely important for both associations now, because there's so many other sports that young girls can go to, whether it's soccer, whether it's rugby, whether it's individual sports, whether it's AFL, wherever it might be. There's so many different sports that they can be attracted to. So we need to look after ladies footballers and camogie players if you want to continue to have the best players playing the game. You
saw that window into professional sport. We were 6 years in Australia. Must be in the Pacific Ocean in terms of the difference.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and you don't like to compare to
amateur, pro sport,
amateur and pro, but. Yeah, it's poles apart, and we take the money side of it away, and that you're getting paid to play the game, but just how well looked after you are, and I suppose I found from the whole medical side of it, I had quite a few injuries in Australia, so I got to see how the whole medical system works, and then obviously I had played Gaelic football here, had a few injuries and a couple of operations that I needed, but the care that you're looked after over there, you have a scan within 24 hours here. If you want a scan, if you don't have private health insurance, you can be waiting weeks. Whether you need operation, surgery, it's happens straight away. It happens within 48 hours. Here, girls can be waiting weeks and months to get stuff done. So that was the biggest thing for me, how well looked after you are. Even now that I'm a retired player from the sport, they're still in contact with you. I'm over in Ireland for the last 6 months, but I'm still getting emails, I'm still getting calls to see how I am, if I need any help with education, if I have any medical issues or concerns, and they look after you for the rest of your
post-contract.
Life. This is post-contract, yeah.
Right.
And this is to do with their PA over there. So any injury that I might have sustained over there, and if I've ill effects from it, they still have to look after you and cover you, and they run a great system, and it's called the AFLPA, and it's both men's and women's together. And I just felt, even since I've retired, they're always checking in with you to see how you're struggling with it, so I think that's hugely important for players, because it is the biggest step if you've played sport for a long time, and it's now gone from you instantly. It can be a hard transition. So it's them things, it's the expenses would be nice and players to get looked after well, but it's the basic stuff that I'd be really looking for, and I think it's really important now because there is such an attraction of other sports for girls that we really need to rally this and get this charter done over the next year or so. I can remember talking to media 10 years ago about this, and
right.
There's been incremental changes for very small. We need the big changes, and do
we need the integration thing to happen then for that?
Yeah, I think that's the only answer. I think integration needs to happen very, very quickly, and again, I remember talking, I think it was either Liam O'Neill or Nicky Brennan, and it was in Asia at Asian Games, and one of them was there, and we were talking about integration, and that was probably 7 or 8 years ago, and they were like, oh no, it's going to happen soon, and it still hasn't happened. And yeah, I just think it needs to move quickly because we won't have the same issues. 10 years ago we were talking about dual players having to play on the same day, or having the Cork Mogie players and footballers this year one match in Cork and trying to drive to get to the second half of the ladies football match in Galway. We were talking about these with Rena Buckley and Breach Corkery 8 to 10 years ago, and that things haven't changed. I think if all integration happens, the calendar of games will have to be better done. I think ladies footballers and camogie players will be looked after. I think that's within the club system and the intercounty system. So yeah, there's been changes, but for me I think the changes need to happen a lot quicker.
Okay, well, the LGFA and Camogie Association, I think, feel that they're on the right road, and hopefully from their perspective they can get it over the line with the GA soon. I heard the 2026 be mentioned in that Mary McAleese commission, but we'll see what happens. But anyway, the game tomorrow, Louise Ní Mhuircheartaigh, I'm going to say that again, Ní Mhuircheartaigh, is she the David Clifford of Kerry GA?
Yeah, she certainly is. I'd probably say she's a little bit different to David Clifford. She reminds me of Colm Cooper. Obviously the red hair probably adds to that, but I just think her balance and her two-footedness, and she's quite slight as well. I think she's a very, very skillful player. She probably doesn't rely on her power and strength as much. I think she's crucial to the game tomorrow. There's probably a lot of pressure on her, and she's probably putting a lot of pressure on herself. There was in last year's final when she played Meath, and by her own standards, and she'd be the first to say that she probably underperformed last year, and you could see that was to the detriment of the Kerry team. Obviously Meath came away from last year's All-Ireland quite convincing winner. She scored 2 points from frees and a goal that she got in the day. So yeah, there's a lot of pressure on her shoulders, but at the same time I think that Kerry forward line have improved, and the loss of Síofra O'Shea, their captain, who I think is one of the best underage players coming through, she is a loss. She's a huge loss, and it probably weakens their bench with Danielle O'Leary having to start. But at the same time I think that Kerry attack is very well balanced. Yeah, Louise scored 110 against Mayo, and I think that's what people are looking at. But in games previous to that she was had scored 5 points and 3 points. So I do think there's others contributors, and I think the likes of Hannah O'Donoghue is going to be huge. As I said, Danielle O'Leary, but then the likes of Niamh Carmody and your workhorses in Anna Galvin, I think they're going to be huge. But for me, I think the key battle is around midfield. I think whoever wins the midfield battle, and I know sometimes in GA that can be cliched, but I think Kerry's best player is Louise Ní Mhuircheartaigh, but Dublin's best player is Jennifer Dunn, and I think she's been phenomenal for this year and have been over the last number of years. And I think if Kerry in some way can nullify her influence, and they have two very experienced players in Louise Galvin and Lorraine Scallon there, if they can nullify her to 50% of what she gives out, I think they'll go a long way to winning it.
Arsenal 2, Nottingham Forest 1 now in the Premier League. Taiwo Awoniyi has pulled one back for Forest. There's 83 minutes on the watch. Cora Staunton's with us talking about ladies football out of the big three finals tomorrow. Dublin against Kerry. Never met in a football final in the ladies in 50 years, and Kerry haven't won it in 30 years. Yeah,
Kerry's run at Kem, they're going for, I think they're on title 11 along with Cork, so they're, Kerry are going for outright title holders. But yeah, it's mad to think 1993, the last time Kerry won the All-Ireland, and have only been in the 2012 final where they lost to Cork, bar last year's final. So it's remarkable to think a county, that has, it's such a football stronghold that it's taken them this long to get back there. So I just think it's going to be an absolutely intriguing battle. A Dublin team, and even this week alone, the talk between the two managers. Mick Bohan started quite early about their match in the group stages, and
this was in Parnell Park. It was quite a physical game.
Yeah, quite a physical game. Kerry won by 2 points. I think Louise kicked 1-6 that day, but he came out and said that Kerry bullied them that day, and there was 2 sin bins.
Is that a message to the referee or to his own players, or to
I think it's a bit to everything. He's probably taking a little bit of pressure off his own players, and probably a message to them. But he said Kerry are the most physical team that has ever played the game. I think I debate that. I think his own team, probably set that standard. There was the Cork team. I think Dublin certainly brought the game to a different level of physicality, and I think Meath then added to it. I think Dublin are every bit as physical, if not more, than Kerry. But I think it's a couple of mind games, and I think Declan Quill came back pretty quickly in the next day to say, it's we don't like to be called that we're bullies. We just call it being physical, and I think it's just the way the sport has moved. There's a huge amount of emphasis put in strength conditioning, and girls being in really good shape and being really athletic and strong, and that Kerry team surely has a lot of strong players in it, but as much as the Dublins do. And I recall finals where Dublin hit hard as anyone. Sinead Goldrick was known as a real physical player, and that's the way you want the game played. It's girls train really hard, and that's the way we want to play it. But I just find it intriguing. Mick is very good at that, and taking pressure off his players, but maybe putting a little bit of pressure on Shane Curley, but he's been around the block long enough to know not to take any of that or read anything into that. But that said, how the game is refereed tomorrow will have a huge bearing on how the game is played and how the game will go.
It's a bit like the men's team for Dublin. They haven't won since 2020. Are they channeling a lot of hurt as well?
Yeah, I think it's, and a lot of people probably laugh at that. It's their famine that they haven't won an All-Ireland in 3 years. But it's Kerry's famine is 30 years, and I think even in the men's game you have to. But that's the way they're wired. They haven't won in 3 years. They're channeling the hurt. I especially think from their 2001 All-Ireland, which they were favourites going into, and Meath took them, and then they went to Donegal last year in an All-Ireland quarter-final, probably a little bit complacent and returned over. So and then in that period of time they've lost a lot of players as well. As I said, there's 40 new players in that Dublin team. Mick has obviously brought that line out this week, but at the same time, if you look at the team that'll line out tomorrow, there's probably only 3 that hasn't an All-Ireland medal. I think 12 of the starters have all All-Ireland medals. So there's a lot of new youth in that team, but a lot of them will be coming from the bench. So there's a lot of experience as well. There's girls that has won 4 All-Irelands, have been there through the bad times and the good time, losing to Cork. So and Mick himself, it's his 7th year in a row with Dublin. He obviously was with them previous before that, so he's 8 years Dublin manager. So they've been around the block, and that's my fear for Kerry. If the game comes to a crunch and it's
experience, does that actually matter?
It does. I think experience, but knowing how to get over the line is a big thing.
What is that?
If you've been there before and you know how to win, and if it's close coming down the line, and you can bring someone like a Sinead Ahern on who's been there and won it on numerous occasions, and it's not that she might come on and kick the winning point, but she can manage the game. She knows how to slow it down. Maybe she knows how to win a cheap enough free, whatever it might be. Yeah. It's experience that you gain over the time. If you've never won it before, you don't know how to do it. It's only when you win it that you know actually how to get over the line. So that's my biggest fear for Kerry going into the last few minutes in the game, that they probably need to be ahead. If they're behind, Dublin are very good at managing games, like all teams are now. So I just think it's going to be a really intriguing battle, and it'll be a battle on field, it'll be a tactical battle off field as well, how they'll go out and attack the game, how Dublin will go after Louise. Do the double team, or do they trust their system? How Kerry go after Jennifer Dunn, how they probably go after the likes of Carol Rowe, Hannah Terrell, Orla Nolan, who's been having a brilliant season. So there's so many different intriguing battles within the game, how to go after it. I know Kerry in their game against Mayo, went after the Mayo kick out and had huge success. Do they go after Abby Shields? She's a newish goalkeeper, right, very young. She did a super game against Cork. But all of these things add to it, and both two very tactically minded managers have been around a long time now, so it's going to be an intriguing battle on the line as well.
Down play Limerick, Cora, in the junior final from 11:45. Down last won this in 2000 to Limerick 2018.
Yeah, so Limerick won in 2018 and went up intermediate and went back down to junior. Very surprised that Down are down at that level. Went down last year, so they'll be looking to bounce back straight away. While I was in Limerick doing a thing for Limerick ladies during the week, and there's huge enthusiasm there. They're on a crest of a wave in GA there with the hurlers, and I have huge admiration for them. I just cannot see that Down team losing. There is a big drop between intermediate and junior, and if you've been playing at intermediate level, Down teams have been winning intermediate over the time. They're a proud footballing county up there, so I think all the cards point to a Down win. But I'm sure Limerick, as I said, they're on a crest of a wave, will come up looking more than hope than anything else. But Down have a lot of experience of girls that have been in intermediate All-Irelands in the past, so I think they're the ones that are going to take that. But I'm hoping that'll be a tight enough game too.
Clare against Kildare in the intermediate final at 1:45. They met in the Division 3 decider earlier this year. Kildare narrowly won that.
Yeah, I think this is another one that's going to be very hard to call. Clare, again, have always been teetering around that All-Ireland semi-final, All-Ireland final stage intermediate. In my time when I played earlier in my career, Clare were a very good senior team. We used to play them in All-Ireland semi-finals, and again, they just couldn't get over that line, and would have faltered then for a number of years, but have always teetered around that intermediate semi-final, have struggled to get over the line. Kildare obviously managed by Diana Hora, who obviously was a former teammate of mine in my early days of my career, and has been around the kind of intermediate managerial train for a number of years. Was with that Down team a number of years ago, and brought them to an intermediate All-Ireland final. Was with that Meath ladies team, I think it was in 2016. So she's been around the block and kind of knows the team. So Kildare have impressed me most out of the two intermediate teams. I think they have a very good system of play. They have some very key forwards. Roisin Byrne has been shooting the lights out for them. So, I just think Kildare just about to get over the line, but I do think it's a cracker. I do think they have that kind of gritty edge. It's going to be quite a physical game, and they probably have the more experienced players that have played in Croke Park on the big occasion. So, I think Kildare just about. But again, it's a very hard one to call.
Down in Kildare in the junior and intermediate, the Cora Staunton verdict. What is the verdict on the senior final? Cora, Dublin, Kerry, 4 o'clock tomorrow. TG Cahir on TV, over 50,000 there. Who, why, and by how many?
This is the hard one. I've been asked this a number of times this week, and my train of thought all year, and I'm going to stick with them, was that I've early in the year was probably asked around February or March who's going to win the All-Ireland. I'd said Kerry. I was worried about Meath at that stage of the year, with players that were in Australia and players that had kind of left to go travelling. And I think Meath or Kerry have been the most consistent team over the league. They obviously won the league final. Bet a good Galway team in the final, bet them well, gave them a hammering in Croke Park that evening. So they've been the form team of the competition. They've probably faltered a little bit in championship. They probably haven't had, even though they got over the line against Mayo, they weren't convincing winners that night. They had a very good first half, but their second half wasn't that good. Where I think Dublin have come the opposite way. They have been, struggled through the league, but at the same time had some good wins and some poor losses against Kerry. They got quite a hammer in the league against Kerry, the same against Galway. Then obviously lost in the first round of the group stages to Kerry by 2 points, but won the Leinster title, where Kerry lost their Munster title. Dublin have been, in their last 2 games in particular, their All-Ireland quarter-final against Donegal, their semi-final against Cork, have been awesome. 16-point winners against Donegal, 12-point winner against Cork, where Kerry have probably gone the opposite way. So I'm going to stick with Kerry because I've backed them all year. I'm going to stick with Kerry by a point. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a draw. I think it's going to be a real tight, tense game. I'm sticking with Kerry just solely because I've stuck with them all year, but I think by a point if even.
Cora Staunton, enjoy tomorrow. Thank you so much for coming in, lending your insight, and it should be a great day.
Thanks a million, John. Thanks for having me.